Okay, seriously now, I'm going to do a game which has nothing to do with the AGS engine. I could give a big speech about catering to the tastes of the wider audiences and broadening my horizons or something, but the truth is I couldn't see any AGS engine games that came up in this time frame. Sorry Golden Week, you'll just have to wait. Mind you, I do need something to fill the remakes and remasters mid-month slot until Full Throttle Remastered comes out. Anyway, today we look at The Silent Age, an unassuming looking game from developer House on Fire, whose blurb only advertises the game as being popular on mobile. Okay, says I, this might be a short wee game I can review in 2 weeks, and I was right on that one, it took me just shy of 3 hours. This might be a lot to ask for its £7 price, and that on its own may have turned a lot of you off, but I don't think this game is bad or overpriced. So I'll try to convince you that this mobile game revamp is worth your time and pennies. And in case you were in doubt about this game's mobile roots, the first screen after picking your language tells you to use headphones. I think you forgot what platform you're porting to, House on Fire. This could make my case a bit difficult. Then again, 7 languages to pick from. Very wide selection, well done there. After that we get the first of 10 chapters to play through. These flow into one another with little more than on-screen text to separate them. Having come out of a few games which were strictly episodic, I found myself appreciating this smooth transition. It feels more like a checkpoint system than anything, and right now I'd rather have that than be required to come out and go back in. So, on to the story, and I should warn you I'm about to spoil the first chapter as it sets up everything else that happens in the game. Plus, they spoil most of it in the description on their Steam page anyway. If you don't want to know anything, here's my short analysis. Nice unique mechanic backed by a solid but short game, absolutely worth buying on sale. Okay, done. Moving on to spoilers. The year is 1965, and a man is working as a painter of what look like ships. He doesn't appear to be very good at it, lots of spots missed there. Now the year is 1968, and a man is in the army. I assume nobody there looks like the last guy we saw. Now we skip to 1969 with a man in the rain holding a sign. A high-ranking entry on the list of jobs I hope never to have. Next we move to 1971 where a man is working as a janitor and that's enough of a promotion to prompt a mustache. And finally we arrive in 1972, the present. I like the simplicity of the backstory here, taking us through 7 years of a man's life in a mere minute and a half with only numbers and pictures. Given that this turns out to be America, you're somewhat forced to assume that this army stint in 1968 was Vietnam related, but it doesn't really get touched on, only a single line where he looks at a gun and makes a remark about basic training. In the present, our man Joe is summoned to the boss's office, a boffice if you will, you probably won't. Turns out Joe's been promoted. Same pay and title, but now he has the duties of his recently resigned co-worker. I'm going to call this a subway promotion for no particular reason and move on. With a fancy new keycard in tow, Joe heads to his ex-co-worker's duty area to find a non-regulation trail of blood. Resisting his natural instinct to clean it up immediately and fill out the relevant form, he follows it. It leads to an old man who warns Joe about an extinction-level event he came from the future to prevent. Unfortunately, he was shot by an overzealous parking attendant. Not the tombstone I had planned, I'll tell you that. The old man hands over his portable time travel device and tasks Joe with delivering it to the old man's younger self in the present. However, a bad case of wrong place, wrong time sees Joe taken into custody by the police, where he activates the device for the first time. The old man was right. The future is gubbed. So now that my longest ever story section is done with, I can talk about this unique mechanic that the Silent Age brings us. The time travel device instantly transports Joe, and thankfully his inventory, between the present and yet another post-apocalyptic future. Side note, I never thought I'd be saying the phrase post-apocalyptic so often when I started reviewing point-and-click adventures. Certain items will only exist in one timeline, certain doors will be open and closed, that kind of thing. And there's plenty to be determined from the differences in past and future backgrounds. We don't know how far in the future Joe goes with his big green button, but looking at this half-painted wall, we know the extinction event comes very, very shortly. Can't promise that's deliberate, it would be a great subtle storytelling method if it was, but I can tell you that they don't give the time of the catastrophe until quite late in the story, which this isn't. The one caveat to your timey-wimey device is that it's solar powered, meaning that the game can take this power away from you by shifting the story to nighttime or by locking you indoors. Otherwise, you're pretty much free to use it at will. Also, you have to ignore the existence of any other power source ever, but that's nitpicking. Dual worlds are nothing new to video games. A Link to the Past, Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, I'd say Day of the Tentacle manages the rare tri-world with its 3 distinct time zones, whereas in Day of the Tentacle you would get a cutscene depicting a change to the timeline. The Silent Age allows you to see the difference almost instantly, certainly feels more deliberate. Change something in the past, boop the time travel button, and bam, history changed right in front of you. Between picking up items in different time zones, passing an obstacle in one time period and switching back, and making changes in the past that affect the future, it offers up a lot of puzzle opportunities. These puzzles start off at a stupidly easy level, but it ramps up before long, giving the unique mechanic a solid backing. Although occasionally you'll have one item to use on a new object that's become available, making the solution extremely obvious, but apart from that, it's solid. The only thing you need to make all this happen is the left mouse button. Makes sense for a mobile port. The tap and hold, tap with another finger to right click mechanic hasn't really taken off. You can also make Joe run by double clicking an object or location, which is why you're seeing this odd trail of cursors in the footage. That's just me double clicking again and again. Unusually for a mobile port, they let you click items to hold them rather than making you click and drag. Glad to see that. However, that one button interface denies you the chance to get a description of your inventory. All you get is the name. They seem to have designed around this, thankfully. You're never left wondering what something does, but it might have been nice. Then again, that might have exacerbated an existing issue the game has. There's a delay associated with many of your actions, especially if it involves a description. It can often lead to you performing an action and getting no appreciable result because the game isn't done describing the last action you took. It can make for slightly slower gameplay, especially with multiple line descriptions that cannot be skipped. It's a minor drawback for a game which otherwise does really well for itself. Now, the art style. It looks a hell of a lot like Flash for a game made in Unity. That might be mistaken for cheap, and the characters do suffer from a lack of detail, but I think it's well done. There's enough detail in the backgrounds, and the characters, while a bit stiff, have had some effort put into their animations. Certainly enough to warrant a 60 frame per second video. Another advantage to using something with the power of Unity is it allows for some fancy effects, like shadows and reflections. Voice acting varies between some fully voiced lines, grunts, or simply saying the first line of the sentence. I've gone through a few examples of games that don't use voice acting, so it's more baffling than something I would put down as a negative. That means you'll mostly be hearing music or ambient noise, another thing the game does very well. The present has the noises you'd expect for being in a city, whereas the future is eerily quiet. Very good contrast. Yeah, this one surprised me. Wasn't expecting much going in, and I got more out of it than I expected. Can't remember what actually pushed me into buying it. I don't automatically purchase every game with a point and click tag on it, but whatever the reason, I'm glad I did. Rather than working simply as an extra inventory item, the time travel doohickey opens up way more potential puzzles than I expected, and the game takes advantage of that very well. I say this is worth a buy, maybe even on mobile if the quality level is equal to the PC version and that's the way you play it. It's certainly worth buying if it's ever on sale. A solid game on its own and even manages to bring something new to the table. That pleases me a lot. Well done, House on Fire. Please write better blurbs for your games.